Hello and welcome to our Learn Python series. Today we have how can we read data from files, how do we write data in files, and then we're going to see how these files in action so we can read student data and write a report in a file. So let's get down to it. In all our examples so far, we have list with 3 or 5 records. In real life, you're dealing with hundreds and thousands of records, and this data exists in external source. For this lesson, we're going to say this exists in a file. So instead of typing all the data here in the source code, we will be reading it from the file. So that means Python provides a way for us to read this data from a file. Function is called open, where you give the path of this file to it. And now there is a second parameter we're going to use, R. R means it's for read only. We don't want anybody to be writing in this file. We just want to read. We're going to read this as a student file. To verify that we did read, you can read the whole content of this file into a variable. You can name it any variable you want. I'm just going to call it student file. I'm going to say read. And to verify, I am going to print the whole content. Now notice that print is the same simple statement but very powerful, and you can see the file's content has been read. All right, so that is good that we read the content. Now we want to read the records line by line. The way you read it is you say for line in student file. Now it's reading line by line. Let's verify that we did read the line. We're going to print this line, and you can see each line is printed. But one thing you notice that on each line, we have 5 values separated by a comma. They don't directly represent a student object. So we need to find a way to split this value so we can create our student object. Before we do that, let's say students file, and we declare a empty list. Remember, the empty list is square brackets. So now we have read. There is a function on the string where you can split the value based on a separator. In this case, separator is comma. So we say values is line. One more thing we will use, because there may be white spaces on left and right, you can just use one function called strip, which will replace both left and right. And then you space split, use the separator as comma, and that will split. To verify that it did split, remember that this is now a list of values, so I can just look at the first value in our list, and what do we have? Now you can see the first value is our first name. All good. Now that we have read all this, let's create our student object. Remember, the object was by using curly braces. We were going to create an empty one, and then we're going to create our key name first name, and we will store the first value in our values array here. Then we're going to say last name 1, and age key is the value corresponding to age is at index 2. All right, so now we have our student object. From our list lesson, we know that if we want to add something to the list at the end, we can append. So we're gonna say student file append. We will just append the student object that we created. So far, no error. Everything is nice. And just to verify that we did so, the student object is correct. Let's access our key first name just to verify it. That you can see that the first key is first name and it is printed correctly. So now what we have done, we have read the content from the file and created our students list from the file. Now we need to create a report from it. That means we're gonna write our report into the file, not on the screen, because when you have to share your report with somebody, you're not going to be asking them, can you come to my computer and let me show your report? You will be putting that in a, now I'm going to say student report. Now one difference, instead of saying R, I'm going to say W, because I am writing it, and we're going to say as student report. And now let's in this case you won't be using print. Here we use write, and we say student report. One new thing we will learn here is that we will use a new line represented by /n. That means that add a new line after this, after you write this line, because we want to make sure that the report is very nicely formatted. And now we're gonna add our dash lines to it and end it with a new line. So now, since we have our list of students, we're gonna use our for loop in on it. We're gonna say for student in our collection, and we're gonna say student report write, and we will use our f string so we can format our report very nicely. We're gonna say first name is, remember the syntax for the f string, where we will say student, and we will access the first name key here because that is going to be our first line. And then we're going to say last name, again the f string syntax, which will access the key last name on the student object. And at the end we will say age is equal to student. We will access the age key from our student object, and we will end this. That's all we needed. And we will, at the very end, we will print our closing line, where we will say one thing that we did not do, we need to add a new line after each record, and we will say report write, and we will say footer report by me. Let's run it. No error, but there is no, you see there's nothing on the screen. Why we don't have it? Because we printed everything into the file. And do we have that file? Let's verify it. Here we go. Now you can see in Colab we have a file called student report. Let's look at the content, and as printed, you can see very nicely formatted. And that is how you use file. In the subsequent chapters, we will see more functionality that we can perform with the files, but for now, this is what we have. Thanks for learning with us. Do subscribe and like our channel. Till next lesson, take care. Goodbye.